Okay, so before this video starts, I just want to say this is a One Piece what if. It is what if Luffy had Shrine. Sorry for, the slip up at the start of the video. But anyways, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below at the end of the video what y'all thought of this what if. And with that being said, enjoy. Hello guys, we are back with another Naruto what if video. Now, at the time of recording this, it is currently 4:24 a.m. Now, you guys are probably wondering, why out of the blue am I doing a One Piece video? Well, it's because I'm bored, alright? It's 4 a.m, nothing to do. So yeah, anyways, we're just gonna start off this what if. Now, I want to explain what this what if is and the techniques. This is what if Luffy had Shrine. Now, if you guys don't know what Shrine is the ability of Sukuna. Now, Sukuna is a 1,000-year-old curse. So you guys are probably wondering, like, how is this gonna merge? How is he gonna merge with Luffy? Well, I will work on that. But anyways, Shrine is the ability of cuts and slashes. But there's also an ability with like fire. So I'll say it's more of like a chef cooking. The chef cuts up the food and then fries them or flames them. So it's like the technique that Sukuna used. Sukuna used Fuga, right? Well, I don't know how does Shrine correlate with it, but I guess I'm just gonna have to work with it. Anyways, first move, dismantle. Be able to dismantle any object in many ways. And cleave. To be able to slash a person. And the slashes match the strength of the person. So the strength varies on every cleave and on every different person. So the cleave is going to be, let's say like you cleave a civilian, well, it's going to be enough to just cleave the civilian. But if you use a cleave on a shinobi, and this is just an example, the damage output would have to be even higher to kill that person. So yeah, as anyways, we have Malevolent Shrine, which of course, is the domain expansion, and Fuga, which I have no idea, but it's just a move that requires dismantle and cleave. So like you need to use an incantation to be able to do it. So it's like how World Cutting Slash is. You need 3 incantations, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. Anyways, let's get started with this what if. So we start this what if off during the birth of Luffy. Now, Luffy would be born, as we're obviously going to have a time skip, because we do not know the age. The mother of Luffy. So, we start this what if off during the time where Luffy is in Makino's bar. Now, Luffy is in Makino's bar as he's talking with Shanks. As Shanks would be, laughing at Luffy. As Luffy's saying that he's a pirate. That he'll become a pirate and that one day he'll sail the seas with Shanks and to just let him join his crew. As Shanks would just sigh, saying, "Look, Luffy, you're a kid. You can't even get on my crew, right? You're not a man." As, this is when Luffy would pout. Luffy would then ask Makino for juice. As Luffy would start drinking the juice, Shanks and his crew would start laughing, saying, "What kind of pirate drinks juice?" Or I think it was milk. But anyways, we're just gonna go to a time to where the bandit, I think it was Higuruma. But no, that's not Higuruma. That's Jujutsu Kaisen. I gotta think. Higuma. There we go. Not Higuruma, but Higuma, with an 8 million bounty, would come in saying, "Hey, my men and I, we need some booze. We need about 10 barrels. So spill it up. I'll pay you." As Makino would say, "I'm sorry, but these men, they drank all of it." As Shanks would say, "Sorry, man. Looks like me and my crew drank this place dry. Here's the last bottle. I haven't even opened it yet." As Higuma would unsheath his sword and break the bottle, Shanks would be covered in booze. Now, as this happens, Shanks would apologize to Makino, as all the events would go as in canon until this one point. Luffy would say, "Hey, stop that!" As Higuma, hearing this, would stop. Looking at the boy, he's about to, walk towards him. But this one, Shanks would, interfere. As before a fight can start out, Naruto would move his hand. Fucking hell. Luffy would move his hand. As Luffy moves his hand, the mountain bandit Higuma's sword would be slashed. As Shanks, seeing the slash and seeing that it came from Luffy, would say, "Luffy, what did you do?" This is when Higuma says, "Hey, you little brat, the hell do you think you're doing to my sword, huh? Oh, you damn brat, I'm gonna teach you a lesson." As Luffy would move his finger again, a slash would appear on the man's chest. So he would cough up blood. This is when Luffy would just look at the man. He's like, "What did I do?" As this is when the mountain bandits would take him away. Higuma, of course, not Luffy, no. As anyways, Shanks would say, "Damn, this is gonna be stressful." As anyways, everything else would go as in canon. Luffy would end up eating the fruit because he was mad at Shanks for letting it happen and everything like that. As Luffy has the Gamu Gamu no Mi. Actually, in this what if, I don't even think I want to give Luffy a devil fruit. You see, the ability of Shrine is pretty broken, and it varies in the person's strength, in the character's strength. So Luffy having a Shrine, the power level would be paired to the world of One Piece. So Jujutsu Kaisen is most definitely weaker than One Piece. So it's reason why I'm making it to where Luffy's power would be resonating or just matching it and, making Shrine stronger. So I feel like Shrine alone is somewhat like a devil fruit. So yeah. Luffy doesn't eat the fruit, but Shanks leaves the fruit behind. As Shanks would tell Luffy that to keep this chest and to never open it unless they meet again. As Shanks would also give Luffy a hat. Now, setting this in course of events, Luffy is not eating the Gamu Gamu no Mi, which means he can still swim. And having Shrine along with the ability to still swim in the One Piece world is absolutely broken. Now, some people are probably clicking off right now saying, "Oh, are you for real? You just messed up the entire what if without giving Luffy his, Gamu Gamu no Mi." I don't want to make him too overpowered, but I also want to make him overpowered. I don't know. I just don't want him to have a fruit at the moment, okay? So only at the moment. As anyways, we just have a time to where Garp would come by, dropping Luffy off in Don Don's place, the mountain bandits, and Luffy would live there for a while. As what? I'll say Luffy is 7 years old. 10 years go by. So, a 17-year-old Luffy would set sail. As a sea beast would appear, Luffy would cut the sea beast into pieces. As I'm not going to explain Luffy's childhood because it most definitely was different, but I will explain it later on. Like a flashback on how One Piece did it, so yeah. As anyways, Luffy would start heading off. As a couple of hours would go by, Luffy would end up in a whirlpool. But having the ability to swim, he would hide in that barrel. Or actually, Luffy would hide in the barrel. As Luffy decides to chill in there for a while, This is when, after a while, the barrel would end up on Alvida's ship, as Luffy would slice the entire barrel apart. Now, the three bandits would be like, "What the hell? Alright, you're coming with us. You're coming to the captain." As Kobe would just be shaking. Now, as this is happening, Luffy would cut and slash all three bandits, as they wouldn't be like in pieces, but they wouldn't be, okay, they are very injured right now. As anyways, Luffy would say, "Hey, you, what's your name?" As Kobe would say, my name is Kobe. Don't hurt me." As Luffy would say, "I don't need to," or "I won't. You don't seem like a bad person. Those three, they did." As anyways, when Alvida comes crashing through the ship, as this is when Luffy would say, "Hey, who the hell is the fat lady?" As this would cause everyone's mouth to drop. Everyone is in a deadpan right now. As this would cause her to, be very, very pissed off. As, then Alvida would rush in with her club. Well, so Luffy would cut the club into pieces. As Luffy uses a dismantle, Luffy would say, "I'll give you about 20 seconds to start leaving leaving your ship, or else." As Alvida would, not really listen, she comes in trying to punch Luffy. Now, of course, Luffy would use a dismantle, as cuts would appear all over Alvida's body, as Alvida would have been passed out. Now, Luffy would ask for a ship to leave that boat, as all of the crew members, not listening, would rush in and try and kill Luffy. But after 5 minutes, Luffy, using dismantle along with, destroying half of their ship, would take a boat from, one of the crew members that just got back from the raid. As Kobe would ask if he can go with him. Kobe doesn't want to be here. He wants to be a Marine. As Luffy would say, "Alright, I guess. I'm going to a town over called Shell's Town. I heard there's a swordsman there, and I really need one." As this would cause Kobe to be like, the legendary Shell's Town? The one with Axe-Hand Morgan? As Luffy would say, "Yep. Anyways, let's start heading off. Are you a navigator? Because I don't really know how to navigate as good." As Kobe would say, "Yeah, I can navigate." As anyways, we're just going to have a time. A time to where Luffy and Kobe would make it into Shell's Town. As they are walking, this is when Luffy meets his eyes, or meets the gaze of Zoro, as Zoro would say, "Hey, you're an eyesore. Get lost." As Luffy would just smile, jumping over the fence, or not fence, but brick wall. That's when Luffy would say, "Hey, it seems you're stuck. Let's make a deal. If I free you, you join my crew." And Zoro would be like, "What the hell? What kind of deal is that? No." As Luffy would say, "Nope, you don't have a choice. Let's say, what if you seem to be a swordsman, right? You're a pirate hunter Zoro. What if I get you your swords back, since it doesn't seem it's here?" Zoro would say, "No, kid. Now get lost." As Luffy decides to do so, as he sees the Marines are coming. Now, Helmeppo would have shown up with a couple of guards. Helmeppo would say, "Well, how are you holding up?" As Zoro would say, "Shut the hell up. Just leave me alone." This is when the girl would show up with rice balls. As she would try and give the rice ball to Zoro, Helmeppo would take them. As Helmeppo takes a bite, he says, "What the hell? You're not supposed to use sugar. You're supposed to use salt. Salt." Now, as he throws down the rice ball and stomps on it. The girl would not like this. She would cry. This would cause Luffy to show up, as Helmeppo would say to throw the girl over the fence. As the Marine would say, try rolling up into a ball so you don't get hurt as badly. As when Luffy would show up, catching the girl. Now, as Luffy shows up, Luffy would say, hey, you're a scum, aren't you? You're one of them... You're one of them Marines who are corrupt, aren't you? Well, I'll deal with you. Say, Zoro, it doesn't seem like this guy wants you out. He might even try and kill you. So let's say if I free you and get your swords back, you'll join my crew? As Zoro would consider it. Zoro would just say, it's whatever. Go ahead. As anyways, we're just gonna have a time to where Luffy would grab onto Helmeppo. As this is when Luffy would knock out both of the Marines that were there, he would start rushing into Shellstown Marine Base. Now, as he's running, Kobe would be running with him, saying, hey, wait! As Luffy says, go back to Zoro. As Kobe would do so. As anyways, this is when Luffy makes it into the Marine Base, saying, alright, Helmeppo, where's the swords at? As Helmeppo would be like, it's in my room. You must put me down right now. My father's not gonna be happy about this. As Luffy hearing this would say, oh, shut up. No, tell me where your room is. As they would be rushing through the corridor, this is when Helmeppo would say, right here. As Luffy would, just knock Helmeppo out and lay him on the ground. As Luffy opens the door, Luffy sees that it's like a pink room. As Luffy would say, that's very fitting of him, isn't it? As this is when Luffy sees 3 swords and decides to take them. As Luffy would jump out the window. Now, Luffy would then, climb up to the top. As this is when he sees a gigantic statue. Luffy decides he's gonna play around and cut the statue, as the statue would get cut in half. This is when Luffy would run down, laughing like a maniac. As this is when Luffy would have put the swords onto his waist. He would start flying down as he sees that Marines would have been lined up, ready to kill Zoro. Luffy would show up. As Luffy would say, Kozo, or no, not Kozo, Sogoda. I'll just say dismantle. I'm not going to say it in the Japanese words, but I'll just say Luffy says dismantle. Now, as this happens, all the bullets would have been sliced into pieces. As this is when Axe-Hand Morgan would show up, saying, so it was you who destroyed my statue, wasn't it? As Luffy would say, yep. And I would do it again if I had the chance. That's when Axe-Hand Morgan would just get very angry, saying, alright men, kill this pest at once. As they all shoot at him again, Luffy would say dismantle. As Axe-Hand Morgan would say, all of you are useless. Alright, any Marine in here who is useless, take your guns and shoot yourself. It seems I have to do everything myself. As when Axe-Hand Morgan would rush in at Luffy, or just run at Luffy, getting ready to strike him down with his axe hand, Luffy would straight up cut his arm off. As when Luffy would kick Morgan in the face, as Morgan would be laid out, knocked out. As anyways, when Luffy gives Zoro all of his swords, as Zoro would say, I guess I'll be a part of your crew. That's when all the Marines would shout and cheer, throwing up their guns, their swords. They're happy to be free. Axe-Hand Morgan was a tyrant. As this is when we're going to have a time to where, Luffy would be in the bar eating food, as the little girl and the mother would just be thinking, the mother would thank Luffy for saving her daughter, and Zoro would thank the girl for being so considerate to give him food. As anyways, we're just gonna have a time to where Luffy would just be in his mind thinking he's got his first crewmate. As anyways, this is when Marines show up saying, "Look, we thank you for saving our place, our island, but you are pirates, right? So then you have to leave." As Luffy would say, "Yes, it's alright, I understand." As people would be in outrage about this. But Luffy would say, "We're pirates. What's the least we can expect, huh?" As when Zoro would say, "Yep, you're damn right about that, Luffy." So, let's start going. As they make it to the ship, Zoro would say, "Is this really the best that you got?" As by the way, like everything that happened with Kobe, like in canon, you know, like Luffy punched Kobe to show that he wasn't his friend, but like he was his friend, you know. He was like making it to where it looked like Kobe wasn't a pirate. So all that was done and, you know, set and done. So yeah, anyways, this one Zoro would just like have a deadpan look saying, "Are you for real? Luffy, where's the rest of your crew?" As Luffy would say, "You're the first one." As Zoro would just, you know, get a deadpan look. As he looks at the boat and is like, "Are you for real? Alright, I guess we can set off." As they decide to do so. Now, we're gonna go to a time to where Luffy and Zoro are just stranded in the ocean. Not stranded, but they're just cruising. As when Luffy would see a bird. As this is when Luffy and Zoro decide to row, as bird means land. Now, as they do so, this is when we're gonna have a time to where Luffy and Zoro would make it to Orange Town. Now, Luffy and Zoro notice that the town is mostly destroyed, as we have a POV change to where a girl with orange hair and a bandana over her head would be running. As she's running from two men, these men have swords, as these are pirates. Now, these pirates try and, you know, get her to go to their boss, as she has stole something from Captain Buggy. Now, this is when we're gonna have a time to where she trips, as this is when she looks back. As the map in her hand, one of the men would get close, but this is when Luffy would show up, saying, "Hey, what the hell do you guys think you're doing to this pretty lady, huh?" As when the men would be like, well, as this is when Nami would say, "Boss, it's you." As Luffy would just play along. This is when the two men would say, "Oh, look, it's her boss. We can probably get more off of him than whatever she had." As it's like a bargain, you know? Since like they think that he is the boss, he might have more, you know, valuable things. But like also, you know, they can get that map from Nami. So yeah. As anyways, when Luffy just decides to be tied up. As Luffy and Zoro would be put in cages, Zoro would say, "Are you for real? Really, Luffy? Are you gonna have us stuck in this cage?" As Luffy would say, No, it's alright. We're gonna wait." As when Nami would show up. As Nami would be, you know, doing the same thing that she did in canon, where she said that she was tired of her boss and that she wanted to join Buggy. As anyways, when Luffy would say, "Hey, you know, I kind of saved you back there, right?" As Nami would just look at him and then look away. As anyways, we're just gonna have a time to where Luffy would just be smiling as Buggy gives Nami a gun. As Buggy says to kill your boss. As Nami would be struggling. Tears would start forming in her eyes, but she would quickly wipe them away. As Luffy would say, "Guns are for actions, not threats." As this would cause Nami to freeze up. As anyways, this is when Luffy would cut both of the cages, as they would be completely dismantled. As anyways, Luffy would stretch along with Zoro. As bad matchup, by the way, but Buggy versus Luffy is gonna be very hard. You see, Luffy is gonna have to like beat Buggy with blunt force instead of just cuts and slashes. Since Buggy is Luffy's natural enemy, You know? So yeah. Once Haki is introduced though, I'm gonna allow I'm gonna allow Luffy to infuse his cuts and slashes like cleave and dismantle with Haki, along with his Fuga. But I'll say Fuga doesn't really need Haki because it's an elemental attack, so it's naturally gonna be able to hit anything. So yeah. And I'll say if it's if his hands are covered in Haki while he uses Fuga, it's gonna hit fruit users, like Logia fruit users, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah. Anyways, we're just gonna have a time to where Luffy and Buggy start fighting, as Zoro would start taking care of the entirety of the other crew. Zoro would take care of the clown trick guy, where the guy was like on a unicycle fighting with swords, as that guy would be easily taken out, seeing as Zoro wasn't injured. So yeah. As anyways, Kabaji, the beast tamer, or Momochi, the beast tamer, was beaten by Zoro quickly, as we have a battle with Buggy and Luffy. Now, Luffy would rush in at Buggy. As Luffy would try and cut Buggy, Buggy would get cut into many, many slashes. As when Luffy would use Cleave on him, Cleave would pierce Buggy in half, but Buggy body parts would start floating around saying, okay, I'm not doing that again. But he starts laughing, saying, "Your cuts can't work on me. I'm a chop fruit user, which means any cut that's done to me will not take effect, which means I can make my body float." As when Buggy would start floating towards Luffy, as this is when Luffy would then cock his fist back and send a right hook straight towards Buggy's face, as Luffy would say, "My cuts and slashes may not work, but my fist can definitely deal with the job." As this would cause, Buggy to just get a little scared. Now, as after 10 minutes go by, Buggy would have been beaten and bruised. As when Luffy sees Nami hiding behind a building, Luffy would literally just dismantle the entire building, as Nami would be left out in the open, as she would start shaking, saying, "Don't hurt me." As Luffy would say, "You a navigator? Because I'm going to need you to be a part of my crew." As Nami would say, I am a navigator." As Nami seeing the power of Luffy and how easily he beat Buggy, even without that power that he has, as Nami would say, "Did you eat a devil fruit?" As Luffy says, "No, actually, this is just an ability that I had ever since birth." Doesn't make any sense, right? But I guess it's like a technique that you were born with, or something that's tied to your personality, I guess. As guys, I really hope to go far in this series, because Doflamingo versus Luffy, Sukuna versus freaking Doflamingo, it's close but not close at the same time. So yeah. Anyways, they both consist of the same technique, technically. Dismantle and also cleave, but it's different. I'll say Doflamingo is more versatile, so yeah. Anyways, we're just gonna have a time to where they set off one more time. As Luffy said that he left about 70% of the money, Nami would hit him on the head and then try and drown him in the water, putting his head under the water as he's wriggling around. As anyways, Zoro would just be laughing. As we're just gonna have a time to where they make it to the next town. Now, this is gonna be Usopp's town. And now, I forgot his town, his town's name. But, hold on, I think it was Syrup Village? Yes, it was Syrup Village. So they make it to Syrup Village, as this is when, the encounter with Usopp would be happening. Now, Zoro would say, "So, Luffy, what are we doing on this island?" As Luffy would say, "I guess to restock, and if we can find a new crewmate, then that would be good." As Zoro would say, "Alright." As anyways, this is when Usopp would say, voice would appear saying, "Beware, pirates, for I am Captain Usopp, the great and fearful Usopp. If you don't leave this town, me and my 800 million men will strike you down." As Luffy would say, "Are you sure?" My guess is there's only 3 of them. As Nami would be like smirking, Usopp would be like, they found me out. As is when all 3 kids would start running, being like Onion, Carrot, and someone else. Onion and Carrot leave along with the other kid. As anyways, when Usopp would be like, what? As when Usopp slips off of the cliff, Luffy would catch, Usopp. As anyways, Luffy would say, you really do remind me of your father. You're Usopp, right? As Usopp would be like, how does he know my name? Wait, you're telling me you know my father? As this is where I'm going to end off part 1 to what if Luffy had Shrine. Now, of course, I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below because I'll be making more videos like this. Anyways, I want you guys to tell me how I did in this. I really feel like I did very good, and this is like a different one for me, because I'm actually doing the One Piece what ifs now. I'm not being lazy and forgetting. But anyways, everything from season 1 to season 25, I already know. But yeah. Anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, I'll be making more what ifs like this. Sorry for repeating myself, but I'm so excited. Anyways, can't wait for part 2. I almost finished the next part to what if Naruto was like Garo. So you guys could, tune in for that. Or I think I finished it, but currently I have like 3 what ifs that are done right now, and I just haven't posted it. Or I haven't found a thumbnail. My bad. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Peace. And yeah, I'm out.